Hey guys, my name's Molly.
And I'm Lindsay, and we're from NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio.
So we're going to teach you guys a little bit today about some of the things that NASA is working on and some of the missions that we're going to be working on in the future. So this right here is the International Space Station. The International Space Station is a large spacecraft that orbits around the Earth, and it's where all the astronauts live and do their work when they're up in space.
And the International Space Station actually weighs 930,000 pounds, and that's equivalent to about 77 elephants, but in space it's weightless because there's no gravity.
Yep, and the International Space Station is the length of an entire football field. So if you've ever been to a football game and seen a football field, that's how long it is. So it's really heavy and it's really long.
So there were 15 countries that helped create the International Space Station, 5 different agencies, and they all contributed to pieces and parts.
So when you're actually standing on Earth, there are certain times of the day and night when you can look up in the sky and see the International Space Station flying overhead. So if you're ever interested, you can go online with your family. It's a really cool website. It's called spotthestation.com, and it's gonna pull up a list like this of all the future dates and times that you're gonna be able to see the ISS flying overhead based off of your location.
So the International Space Station actually orbits around the Earth 17,150 miles per hour. That means that it goes around the Earth 16 times, and the astronauts on board the space station can see 16 sunrises and sunsets in a day.
So this is the actual sunrise that they see from the International Space Station. So now that we taught you guys a little bit about the International Space Station, we're going to talk about some of the astronauts that are living on board. There are currently 6 astronauts on the International Space Station. These are them. We have 3 NASA astronauts from the United States, 2 Russian cosmonauts from Russia, and the commander of the flight is a European astronaut. So NASA actually made history this morning with the first ever all-female spacewalk. So what that means is that these 2 girls right here, they left the International Space Station in their EVA suits, and they went out in space to repair some of the damage that was on the International Space Station. This is the first time that's been an all-female spacewalk.
So they're not just doing spacewalks or goofing around all day, floating around. The astronauts' schedule is planned down to the minute. And one of the things that Expedition 61 is working on is testing out new vests that help protect them from radiation. So they'll send that feedback down to Earth.
So you might be wondering, if the ISS is so far away, how does everybody on Earth talk to the astronauts up in space? So we actually use something called radio waves. We're from the Space Communications and Navigations Department, and this is an example of a ground station. You might have seen one. It just looks like a really big satellite dish. We use these ground stations on Earth to send invisible radio waves up to the satellites and the ISS up in space, and that's how we talk to the astronauts.
So NASA's next mission is actually to return to the moon, and it's called the Artemis mission. And I'm going to pull up the moon right here on our puffer sphere.
Yeah, so in the past, we've had 6 total manned missions that have landed on the moon, and that includes 12 people that have walked on the moon.
So 12 people have walked on the moon, and the first to walk on the moon is Neil Armstrong, and he was part of Apollo 11.
Which you can see right here. We're going to click on it on the puffer sphere, and some facts come up. This is the exact landing spot on the moon where he actually landed.
In 1959, and that was 50 years ago, which NASA just celebrated the 50th anniversary.
So those were the Apollo missions, and in Greek mythology, Apollo's twin sister is Artemis, so that's why our future lunar missions are going to be the Artemis missions. Fun fact.
And although we can see the moon in the night sky, it's actually pretty far away. It's over 238,000 miles away from Earth.
So the moon can reach really, really hot temperatures and really, really cold temperatures depending on where it's in orbit around the sun. So here on Earth, a typical day is 24 hours, half sunlight, half nighttime. On the moon, there's actually 13 and a half days straight of sunlight and then 13 and a half days straight of darkness. So when the sun's reaching the moon, it can reach temperatures of over 260 degrees Fahrenheit, so really hot. And then when it's on the other side of the orbit and there's darkness on the moon, it can reach below temperatures of negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit, so really cold. So depending on where the moon is in its orbit, it can be either very hot or very cold or somewhere in the middle.
So as we've mentioned, we've been to the moon at 6 other times, 12 people have walked on it. Why would we return? Well, actually, we're going to the South Pole because we believe there's ice and other resources. We're actually working with different countries and companies, and we're trying to inspire the next generation to further exploration on to other places such as Mars.
So the moon is going to be our jumping point. We're going to get to the moon by 2024, and from there we're going to work on going to Mars.
So thanks for learning about Artemis and the moon and the International Space Station.